We've been working on a very special project for months, and we hope you'll stay with KEZI 9 News for the next hour as we reflect on last year's wildfires.
Those fires impacted the lives forever for thousands of people, and tonight we tell some of their stories. Please join us for The Road to Recovery, and it starts right now.
Live, local, late breaking. This is a special presentation of KEZI 9 News. The Road to Recovery, 1 year later.
Like a streak of red and orange, it took just one night for the state to be swept away by flames.
She knew right away that it was something they were not going to be able to contain. They did not have reinforcements coming anytime soon. And so she just said, let's go, let's get them out.
Holiday Farm, Archie Creek, Santiam, Almeda.
And we got the emergency alert on my phone, and it said level 3 evacuate now.
We ran out with nothing.
Blue River, Detroit, Phoenix, Talent.
The backyard's pretty toast.
All of us lost our homes, not just us.
A fire season that scorched its way into history.
More than 1 million acres and thousands of homes reduced to ash as fire crews desperately fought the flames and volunteers helped those forced out of their homes.
It's tough to fight fire with a broken heart.
People are definitely tired. There's no question about that.
The scars of 2020's historic wildfires are branded across the foothills, even as communities scramble for footing in the recovery process.
It's been an uphill battle, and we're still going uphill.
Though they may never be the same, they're determined to rise from the ashes.
We are going to come back. It may look like things are really bad right now, but don't give up.
That one night changed thousands of lives.
We are Mackenzie Strong. We belong here.
Now, 1 year later, a new chapter begins.
It was on this day 1 year ago, people were racing from their homes here in Blue River and the rest of the Mackenzie River Valley trying to get to safety, and firefighters were racing towards the danger. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of KEZI 9 News. I'm Matt Templeman.
And I'm Renee McCullough. Tonight we are looking at, yes, some of the devastation, but also how survivors are coping and rebuilding their properties and their lives.
For one family in Blue River, their lives could be much different tonight if not for two firefighters who risked their own lives by driving directly into the face of danger.
They rescued a woman and two 6-year-old girls, and now a year later, they still have a bond that can't be broken. Tiffany Lemers remembers that night like it was yesterday.
Yep, we were stuck all night at the track.
It was almost 10 when she left for work. She'd confirmed with the fire department it was safe to leave her sister, who couldn't drive, and her niece and daughter, both just 6 years old, at home. Just minutes after she left home, she got the alert. They had to get out immediately.
She said the fire was everywhere. It had already hit the back porch. Told her to soak the girls' blankets. She said there was no way out at that point.
With her sister on speakerphone, Tiffany turned around and headed back towards the flames.
She was telling me, you know, they were making their way down the driveway. Everything was on fire.
She could hear the girls crying.
I hit a vehicle, went around, and I kept going.
Windows exploding in the background.
A tree came across the road, and at that point, you got less than 2 seconds to make the decision. Am I going to be stuck on this side away from my family on the fire, or am I going to be stuck on that side closer to them? So I gassed it and I went over, and as I gassed it, both my passenger tires blew.
Her car would limp a few more miles to the Blue River Bridge, where she got a ride from a Springfield firefighter. But the winds soon shifted and he was ordered to get out.
He said, you know, I can't go any further. I have to turn around.
She says they drove back to the bridge and she got out and started to run. Another officer managed to get her closer, and soon after, her sister saw headlights.
Kelly Loper and Dan from the Junction City Fire Department had turned around and were looking for my address, and they had seen my mailbox. And when they had looked over, they seen my sister and both girls huddled under. And they picked him up.
Like many others, they spent the night at the high school track, and the next morning, a grateful Tiffany called Kelly Loper's wife.
I was very happy to get to cell phone service the next day and let her know that he was a hero. Like he said, it was the first time in his career that he did not know if he was going to make it out. And he was in that fire truck with two 6-year-old little girls. You know, how do you keep a brave face? But he did.
It was a rough night. It was a rough night.
Kelly Loper will tell you he was just doing his job.
It's just what we always think. I mean, go up and try to do what we can, help as many people as we can.
But that night clearly connected these two families forever. He now has a tattoo.
So it's kind of a tribute to them and the fire in general, in the community of Blue River. And
with a badge, flames, and the names of the 3 people he helped save. Tiffany also got a tattoo.
No, I'm in hell up the McKenzie in more fire than I've ever seen. And that was the last text message that Kelly had sent his wife, Wendy, while he was up here before they lost cell communication.
In the hours that followed, Tiffany would learn her 2 dogs didn't survive.
That was my biggest loss in the fire.
The home that they had just bought was also gone.
3 months. We made 1 mortgage payment.
A year later, Tiffany and her family are back on their property, living in a 5th wheel.
And I've always had a garden. Not having a house, I figured I could have a garden still, so.
Now 7, her daughter Ronnie is ready for a new school year.
I'm really excited for 2nd grade, even though I have to get back to going to bed early and getting up really early.
As they navigate the tedious process of trying to rebuild with the many delays and uncertainties, Tiffany and her family know one thing for sure. They're not leaving Blue River.
From start to finish, it's been McKenzie strong, nonstop.
She knows better than most that without this community, without Kelly and Dan, she would be here today with a much different outlook on the road to recovery.
No amount of thank yous that I can say to them for being volunteers and having the bravery of turning around to get them and go all the way through. You know, they had to drive over trees. It was the first time in his career he thought he wasn't going to go home for his wife, and it was because he turned around for my family.
You know, sometimes it's something life-altering, like the Holiday Farm fire, that makes a person appreciate the little things in life. Well, Jeff and Lisa Blumhagen, they know exactly what I'm talking about. The fire took just about everything they owned, almost everything. But there's some things it couldn't take.
Spend even a short amount of time with Jeff and Lisa Blumhagen, and you'll quickly realize even though they lost so much, they still have a sense of humor and they know what's most important. To tell this story, we turn back the clock a year, the night they went to bed in the midst of a power outage.
A lot of times we leave our cell phones in the family room charging overnight.
But on that night, without power, Jeff had his phone nearby. Thankfully, because around 1 a.m., they got a level 1 notice.
You ready? And like 45 minutes later, it was, get the heck out of there now.
They grabbed a single suitcase, thinking they'd be back the next day to gather more belongings, including their pictures, Lisa's jewelry box, and some other precious possessions.
We checked the news that morning, and the fire was already in Leeburg by then. So we're like, well.
And soon enough, confirmation.
A couple of days later, we actually got a picture from someone who was here that night still, and it was actually a picture of our house burning.
Yeah.
And that was the first indication we had that we had actually lost the house.
The only items forgiven by the flames, a flag firefighters had rescued, and by the river, a pair of chairs they've used for years to soak up the view. It would be a couple of weeks before they were allowed back.
You would come in the front door right about here.
For decades, it was the home of Vern and Marilyn Blumhagen, Jeff's parents, until May of 2019 when Jeff and Lisa made it theirs.
Dining room, family room. Right here was a beautiful fireplace, like the best fireplace with a gorgeous hearth. We sat on that hearth. We hung stockings on the mantle.
And in front of that mantle is where they posed for pictures for years. And for the first time on this day, Lisa got emotional.
It's those little things, like you said, the stockings. Mm-hmm. Those are the memories you will never get those out of your mind.
Right, right.
But they can't take those from you either.
No, no.
For Jeff and Lisa, they'll have to rely on those memories because the fire took the photos.
And every event we had, pretty much, I would fill an album and, you know, do the anecdotal notes and talk about it. And that was like one of the things I grieved the most at first. But just like you said, I can sit down and close my eyes and turn the pages and still see those photo albums. So that'll never be gone.
Like I said, after nearly 26 years of marriage, Jeff and Lisa know what's important.
All along, we've kind of had a posture of just gratitude, you know. I mean, it looks different, but look where we get to live.
The rebuilt house will look different, sound, smell, and feel different. In fact, they'll have air conditioning throughout, instead of just 4 rooms chilled by a smaller unit they had just bought.
Had it 3 weeks and the house burned down. But hey, I'm still paying on the loan. And the mortgage and house insurance. I got house insurance on that.
Remember what I said about humor and an appreciation for the little things in life and something they had left behind.
You know how you just kind of beat yourself up? I looked at my jewelry box and I went,
we'll be back.
We'll be back.
After several months of gathering permits and passing inspections, Jeff and Lisa hadn't forgotten about that jewelry box.
This was our bedroom window, right?
Right about there, yeah.
Yeah, so it was right about,
right in this area.
Right about here.
And they hadn't given up on finding it. Jeff rigged up some things with a battery-powered saw and built a sifter. And after pouring in 10 buckets of dirt,
we got a ring.
Her mother's 50th anniversary ring. Because it was platinum, it survived the heat. The little things in life. A ring, a couple of chairs, each other, and a view.
The river's the same. It's consistent. It's constant. It's beautiful.
It's home.
It's home. Yeah.
And Jeff and Lisa do say they're hoping to have their home ready for spring.
Well, the Blue River that we're sitting in now looks much different than it did just a few months after the fire. Take a look at this video from above from February, before these 2 groups of volunteers showed up to clean up. The Cascade Relief Team and Reach Out Worldwide help families who have been victims of natural disasters. They do the work in phases. First, they get rid of the metal, and then they dispose of the ash. It costs about $18,000 on average to clean up a lot. They finished their work in May and cleaned up more than 30 lots.
Even students at McKenzie High School are helping their neighbors, and they're learning some lifelong construction skills at the same time. They've partnered with Sheds of Hope and others to build sheds for those who lost a structure. People can use them to store their tools and other valuables while they rebuild. Students also learned math and construction skills, putting those 15 sheds together.
And to talk more about the recovery, we are joined by the unofficial mayor of Blue River, Melanie Stanley. And we want to start with just tell us what makes your community so special here.
I think the fact that we're just close to each other, especially when there's tragedy. You know, we may be the worst people sometimes to each other, but when there's tragedy, we always gather together and try to help each other out. And we will always help lift each other up.
And that's a nice part about a small town, isn't it? It's, how many people live here now compared to before the fire?
I think we're right about a third of what we were at the time of the fire. People are coming back in small batches at this point. We've got people that are still waiting on permits. We've got other people that I think are still waiting for the fire season to be over to kind of see what that looks like and how that plays out, to even decide whether they want to rebuild.
And the fire station, the Upper McKenzie Fire Station, was one of the buildings that was destroyed. What's the plan to rebuild that?
The plan at this point, we were given a really good sum of money from the state legislature through a special bill. And so we're thankfully going to be able to rebuild a much bigger station than what we had. We had it was like a garage on steroids is what everybody calls it. The plan is to build something bigger with more bays, maybe potential for a larger area for training for our firefighters, and room to grow.
We understand the McKenzie River Clinic is getting a big grant as well to rebuild.
Correct. Their plan at this point is to remain on the site where they were, and they're looking at a ton of different options because we're all kind of in the same boat right here in Blue River. We have small lots. Mm-hmm. And so for them, they would really like to expand to be able to provide better services and more services. So they're looking at potentially being able to grow up instead of being able to grow out.
And then the O'Brien Memorial Library, can you give me an update on that?
The O'Brien Memorial Library purchased 2 adjoining lots to their previous location. So they've purchased a pretty decent sized piece of land to be able to hopefully expand and provide additional services as well, kind of come into the 21st century, but still have that small town library feel.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Last year's wildfires were not only devastating for the landscape, they also left people with mental and emotional scars. How families and firefighters are still trying to cope, and the resources available to help coming up in our next half hour.
And it's back to school tomorrow for students and staff in the McKenzie School District. How they're preparing for the first day of classes next.